Now that the league is growing like crazy, I'm getting asked a ton of questions about a very important subject: how to play on a team. Making sure you're squared away as an individual contributor is the first step towards being a good teammate. If you don't know how to handle the basics, don't know how to play for blood, and are generally unaware of the metagame, you'll just be a liability. That's why so much of what I've covered for beginners is about you, the individual player. Refining your own play is the first critical step towards being a good teammate. But once you have those basics down, you'll find that your individual skills are not enough to play well in a team environment. The reason for this is simple. In team games, a single strong individual is easy to overcome when faced with multiple opponents, even if those opponents aren't very good. The sheer number stacked against you will mean you're always at a disadvantage as an individual player. With this video, I'm creating the first in a series about team-oriented subjects. More are coming, so hang tight if you reach the end of this one, and I haven't covered a specific topic you're interested in. Let's start by talking about what makes Onward so hard, and why teamwork is so important. Onward is not a game to be selfish in because it contains two core game dynamics: low-TTK and snowballing. Low time to kill, or TTK, is something I've touched on in previous videos. In simple terms, it means you can die fast, and whoever wins in an encounter between opponents is whoever has the dominant angle and/or makes the first move. That means, all else being equal, a single individual has very little chance against multiple attackers when confronted. It can work out by sheer luck, or if the individual has some way to dominate the angle, but in most cases you will die if you find yourself facing more than one opponent. It's because of this you'll see top teams send out mini teams of 2 or 3 players, especially on offense. Deploying multiple people to the same area means that they have a higher chance of taking out single opponents, and it increases the chance of what's called a refrag, which is when a player kills the person who killed their teammate. Snowballing occurs in games where losing players, pieces, or some other components of the game creates larger and larger problems, much like a snowball gathers mass as it goes down a hill. You'll find this dynamic in games where you can't replace what you've lost, like chess. If you lose your queen in chess, it's gone forever, and losing your queen means your chances of winning are permanently lower. These games often revolve around removing resources from opponents until they're incapable of defending themselves. Contrast this with a game like basketball, where no matter what happens, one team can't hobble the other in a structural way. If you score a three-pointer, you can't just suddenly kneecap the other team's point guard or take their center off the court. Any game that has low TTK or snowballing turns into a game of inches in high-level competition. Small mistakes can turn into an avalanche of problems in the blink of an eye. In shooters like Onward, or for you pancake gamers out there, CSGO, this means that losing a player puts you at a permanent disadvantage. If someone on a team dies, that's one less person who can cover an angle, create distractions, or otherwise contribute to either offense or defense. Quality teams will recognize this and take advantage by responding with flanking maneuvers or flooding into a weak spot in the other team's formation. These two dynamics are also the reason you see the best teams behave so conservatively in the early stages of a round, and why they prioritize revives so much. It's a huge advantage to take out even one person on the other side, and if you can bring back a teammate, then it's worth rotating around or otherwise taking some amount of risk to give your team a numerical advantage. For the purposes of our discussion, this all translates into an easy to understand idea. If you do something reckless and die, you're putting your team at a potentially fatal disadvantage. If you're only focused on yourself, this will happen all the time. A lot of what separates good teams from bad teams is an understanding of this dynamic. Watch some games at the lower tiers and you'll see teams lose 1 or 2 players early in the round, which turns the round into an uphill battle. While it might seem like not such a big deal, losing even one player before you can set up an offense or defense can wreck your chances of success. At the highest level of competition, team games turn into battles of communication. Everyone involved is good at the game itself, and who wins is often determined by who has the better communication infrastructure. In general, you want to play smart in any game with such punishing dynamics, and the only way to do that is by coordinating with your teammates. With a team game like Onward, it turns out that it's better to have a team of okay players who coordinate very well than a team of absolute killers who never want to act as team players. While this subject encompasses a lot of habits and practices, Here are a few tips to get you started down the right path. First of all, be more patient when moving across a map. One thing that is an absolute killer for new players is a lack of spatial awareness. You need to be thinking about where you're strong and where you're vulnerable at all times, and the same for all of your teammates. Before you cross through an open space, talk to your teammates. Is someone in position to refrag if you go down? Can you or someone else pop a smoke or create a diversion with suppressive fire? More importantly, is there another, safer way for you or your teammates to advance? As I discussed in my video on Tilt, rushing and making aggressive moves is more exciting and enjoyable, so newer players tend to have less discipline when it comes to modulating their aggression. It's worth taking a deep breath and recomposing yourself and your teammates before you get wiped out prematurely. Secondly, communicate, communicate, communicate. I can't stress this enough. Quality communication makes the world of team games go round. It's a skill, and you should treat it as such, which means practicing and codifying how you're going to talk to each other. Don't get too rigid about it, as you want to be able to communicate naturally, but make sure you have a common language for callouts and procedures for when specific events occur, like jamming the mic if someone's capping. One thing that newer players tend to do is zone in too much on the situation in front of them and stop talking. Make a habit of checking in on the radio, if only to keep everyone talking. An easy way to do that is by asking about where people are, what angles they're watching, or what the kill count is. All of that is useful information anyway, and it keeps everyone working together. Third, focus on building trust and cohesion over tactics. The dominant tactics change with the metagame all the time, and tactics in general can be taught. But what is much harder to build and sustain is the key ingredient of any good team: trust. Every person on the team needs to be aware of where their teammates are, what they're doing, and what their responsibilities are in any given moment of a match. This can never be done perfectly, of course, but as you gather experience as a team, you should see a steady increase in your intuitive ability to play together. You can't plan this out too much, as it's a natural, evolved process. Only by playing together on a regular basis and constantly working on your individual and team-wide leagues can you develop what could be considered a high level of cohesion. Fourth, a lot of new people are telling me they're hesitant about joining a team because they feel like their individual skills aren't up to snuff. While this is a problem, if you want to join a diamond or master level team, at the bronze tier that shouldn't be as much of a concern. All the surface level skills you might be concerned about, like your ability to shoot, move, etc., can be worked on in your own time. But learning to become a good teammate is much more difficult, and you can only do it by working within a team environment. So if you're on the fence, just go join a team, or even create one if you can't find one to join. Your skill as an individual contributor will come, but team dynamics are much harder to master. Get started on that process now.
They did. They took a map off of G-Men in the championship.
I'm boring as hell.
Hi, my name is Izzy. I'm just eating through this game. No.
Just see what objective he's
There we
got.
go. You're already.